In 1849, thousands of gold seekers were racing west. Some followed established trails, some followed printed maps, some followed guidebooks, and some followed rumors of shortcuts. But between many of them and the goldfields of California stood one enormous obstacle, the Sierra Nevada. For wagon trains, the Sierra was not just a mountain range, it was a wall. And somewhere near the southern end of that wall was supposed to be a way through it, a pass. Walker's Pass. The pass was real. Joseph R. Walker helped prove that, but knowing the name of the pass was not the same as knowing a safe wagon route to reach it. Hi, I'm Ed, and this is Dusty Desert Trails. Today we're going beyond the marker as we explore the discovering of this particular pass by Joseph R. Walker, and how that information ended up going onto maps, which later influenced the 49ers, and how people moved and immigrated across the West down into California. Let's get a little dusty. This is California Historical Landmark number 99, Walker Pass. The marker tells us that Joseph R. Walker left the San Joaquin Valley through this pass in 1834. Now that sounds simple, but in the age of wagon travel, that sentence means so much more. Walker did not just move through a random gap in the mountains. His crossing helped prove that this southern Sierra route existed, and in 1830s and 1840s, proving that route existed could change history. To us, this is just a paved highway through the mountains. But to early travelers, the Sierra Nevada was one of the final great barriers into California. A horseman might find several ways through the rugged country, and a pack train had fewer choices. But a wagon train needed something very specific. It needed water, grass, and grades the animals could manage. It needed a route that would not destroy the wagons before they even reached their destination. So when Joseph Walker crossed through this southern Sierra country, that knowledge mattered. It did not stay here on the mountain. It began to move. It moved through conversations, through expedition knowledge, into reports, and eventually onto maps. And eventually, it moved into the hands of those seeking gold in California. To understand why Walker Pass mattered, we need to understand the problem. California was not simply west. For overland immigrants, California was behind deserts, mountains, rivers, snow, and distance. The Sierra Nevada stood between the interior west and the valleys of the California. For a wagon train, that was a serious problem. That's the key in this story. The 49ers did not just need to know where California was. They needed to know where the Sierra could be crossed. A pass was not just a landmark. The pass was a solution. Walker Pass represented a possible way through that wall. Joseph Rutherford Walker came out of an old mountain man world. This was a world of trappers, traders, pack animals, native trails, guide knowledge, and long-distance movements through places American mapmakers still barely understood. In 1833 and 1834, Walker led a party west towards California and then back across the Sierra. His 1834 return crossing is the one remembered here at Walker Pass. Now, I have to be careful when I use the words like discovered. Native people already knew about these lands. Trails, water sources, seasonal routes, and mountains crossings existed long before Walker, Frémont, or the 49ers. But in the world of American expansion, Walker's crossing mattered because it carried this route's knowledge into the American record. Walker was not just traveling, he was becoming part of the chain of information that would later shape maps, reports, and migration. This is how a trail becomes documented knowledge. Someone crosses it, someone remembers, someone reports, someone maps, someone else follows. And sometimes, someone follows with only half the information they actually needed. A decade after Walker's 1834 crossing, John C. Frémont's expeditions helped bring Western geography into a new stage. Frémont became famous as an explorer, but his cartographer, Charles Prius, helped turn exploration into maps. Frémont knew of Walker's crossing and helped attach Walker's name to this pass. That matters, because once a route enters reports and maps, it becomes more than memory. It becomes part of the geography that other people plan around. So when we ask whether Joseph Walker contributed to the maps the 49ers used, the answer is yes, but not in the simple way that we might picture it. Walker was not necessarily drawing the maps, he contributed to something more basic. He contributed route knowledge. He helped prove that the Southern Sierra crossing existed. Later explorers and mapmakers helped move that knowledge into the printed copies for the geography out west. By 1849, Walker Pass was well known enough that gold seekers were looking for it. That's a powerful legacy. Then came gold. In January of 1848, gold was discovered at Sutter's Mill. By 1849, the rush was on. The 49ers came by sea across Panama, around Cape Horn, through Mexico, and overland across the continent. For the overland travelers, the route west was exhausting and dangerous. A late start could be deadly. A bad trail could cost animals and wagons. Snow in the Sierra could stop a party cold.
so the idea of a shortcut became almost irresistible.
And that is where Walker Pass becomes part of the Gold Rush story. For some 49ers, Walker Pass was not just a place on the mountain, it was hope. It was a southern way through the Sierra Wall. It was associated with documented crossings. It was a named pass. And if you were exhausted, behind schedule, desperate to reach the gold fields, that name sounded like salvation. But a real pass can still become a dangerous promise.
And that's where Walker Pass becomes part of the Gold Rush story. For some 49ers, Walker Pass was not just a place on the mountain, it was hope. It was a route through the Sierra Wall. It was associated with documented crossings, and it was a named pass. And if you were exhausted, behind schedule, and desperate to reach the gold fields, that name could sound like salvation. But a real pass can still become a dangerous promise. By 1849, immigrants had more information than early travelers. They had printed maps, guidebooks, expedition reports, letters, and rumors passed from camp to camp. Sometimes they had hand-drawn sketches from someone who claimed to know a better way. But more information did not always mean better information. A line on a map could hide miles of dry country. A named pass could hide the brutal route needed to reach it. And a shortcut could look simple on paper, but become a disaster on the ground.
That's the danger of this story. Walker Pass was real. Walker's route knowledge was real. But by the time the knowledge reached the desperate immigrants, it could be incomplete, copied, misunderstood, or mixed with rumor. The map still shows the destination, but the desert demanded a route.
One of the most dramatic examples is the story of the lost 49ers. They were part of a larger overland migration trying to reach California in 1849. Their guide, Jefferson Hunt, intended to lead them south towards Los Angeles. But along the way, the promise of a shortcut changed everything. In some accounts, the lure was a hand-sketched map showing a supposed route across the desert to Walker's Pass. In Chalfant's account, someone had obtained a copy of one of Frémont's maps showing the route across Walker Pass, a route that appeared to save hundreds of miles. Either way, the idea was the same. Walker Pass looked like a shortcut through the Sierra Wall.
And this is exactly why Joseph Walker matters to this story. The pass was not imaginary. Walker helped prove that the Southern Sierra crossing existed. Frémont's map work helped move that knowledge into the wider world of immigrant planning. So when the 49ers heard Walker Pass, they were not just chasing pure fantasy. They were chasing a real place. But they did not have a safe, reliable wagon road to get there.
At Poverty Point, the larger caravan broke apart. Chalfant says Hunt warned against the dangerous routes ahead. Those who accepted Hunt's advice were led south and safely into Southern California. But the Jayhawker-related breakaway parties pressed on. From there, the shortcut became a trap. They crossed dry country, false lake beds, bitter water, mountain ranges, Death Valley, and the Panamints. Wagons were abandoned, animals weakened, men scattered, some died. The pass they were chasing was real. The road to it was the danger. And here our story returns back to the desert. California Historical Landmark number 457 says that after 5 days of travel from the Argus Range, the Manly Jayhawker parties found their first water at Indian Wells. And it places that water hole on the Joseph R. Walker Trail of 1843. Indian Wells was not just another stop, it was survival. It was water after days of desert travel, and it was the moment when the Death Valley parties reached Walker's documented trail world.
This is a connection I don't want to lose. The 49ers were looking for Walker Pass because Walker's earlier route knowledge had helped make the Southern Sierra crossing known. And when the Manly Jayhawker parties found that water at Indian Wells, they were not just near a valley like what we now know as Ridgecrest. They were on the Joseph R. Walker Trail. They had finally intersected route knowledge that they had been chasing.
Chalfant adds another powerful detail. One group near Owens Lake found the old trail made by Walker's last party. A friendly Indian advised them to follow it, and they did, through Walker Pass to safety. That's the story in one sentence. Walker's trail knowledge survived on the land, on maps, and in memory. But for the 49ers, reaching that knowledge came at a terrible cost. Now, there's a difference between a destination and a route. A destination is a name, Walker Pass. A route is everything between you and that name. Water, grass, distance, terrain, weather, animal strength, wagon damage, wrong turns, human endurance. These elements is what the old Oregon Trail game was based on. The 49ers knew enough to chase the Walker Pass, but some of them did not know enough to reach it safely.
And that is why Walker's contribution matters. His crossing helped prove the Southern Sierra route existed. His trail knowledge helped make this pass part of the documented geography of the West. But the Jayhawker story shows the dangers of partial knowledge. They knew about the pass, but they did not truly know the road. So when we say Joseph Walker contributed to the maps that the 49ers used, we need to understand what that really means. He was not necessarily drawing the map and the lines on it. Walker helped prove that the Southern Sierra crossing existed. Fremont and others helped move that knowledge into reports and maps. Commercial map makers and immigrants spread it further, and by 1849, Walker Pass was well known enough that gold seekers were actually trying to find that as a destination.
A man crosses the mountains. A pass takes his name. The route enters the Western knowledge. That knowledge reaches maps. The map shapes expectations, and those expectations send people into the desert. This is how history moves. Not always cleanly, not always accurately, and not always safely.
One of the dangers of old maps is they looked more confident than what they really were. The lines looked clean, but the land was not. The map shows a pass, but it didn't tell you whether the animals could reach it. It didn't show you where water holes were. It might show open country, but it doesn't give you the conditions like the heat, the distance, and the lack of grass. And that's why route knowledge mattered, and that's why men like Joseph Walker mattered.
The 49ers lived in a dangerous space between known and unknown. They had enough information to dream of shortcuts, but not always enough information to survive them. Walker Pass was part of that known world. The desert route to reach it was still dangerously uncertain. Today, Walker Pass is easy to find. There's a highway, there's signs, GPS coordinates, and a historical marker. But in 1849, for some gold seekers, Walker Pass was more than a place. It was a hoped-for doorway through the Sierra, a southern passage through the wall, a shortcut to California's gold fields, a name on the map that seemed to promise they were almost there.
This is why this marker matters. It remembers Joseph Walker's crossing, but just beyond the marker we find something larger. We find the story of how geographic knowledge moved from trail knowledge to local knowledge. Mountain men, walkers, explorers, reporters, maps, wagon trains, and eventually to the 49ers. Walker Pass was real. Joseph Walker helped prove that. And when the Jayhawkers finally found water at Indian Wells, they had reached the Joseph R. Walker Trail. But the gold rush showed that knowing a pass existed and knowing how to reach it safely are two different things. Joseph R. Walker may not have actually drawn the maps, but his knowledge influenced the way the maps were drawn, which later were handed to people like the 49ers and the Jayhawker Party, and which later used this location as a marker to figure out where they were. The information, because Walker traveled through here, indicated, hey, there was probably water along the trail, which is exactly what the Jayhawkers Party was looking for when they were trying to escape from Death Valley, as they were going down towards Southern California. So Walker Pass here, it was hope on a map. It really, really was. So I hope this was exciting and entertaining for you. If this was informational, you learned something, please hit the like, subscribe, and share buttons, get it out there. And as always, happy trails.